So welcome everyone to the first ever virtual Gould Farm Info Session and Career Fair. Thank you so much for joining us. So my name is Stephanie McMahon and I'm the Outreach Director at Gould Farm. And I grew up on the farm in the 80s as the child of 2 staff members. I then returned as a volunteer in my early college years and worked on the farm, kitchen, and residential teams, as well as in the Boston Transition Program while I was in college out there. I've been back at the farm for 4 years and live here with my family. And also here representing the farm today are Nathan Yapel, Lisanne Finston, and Tamara McKernan, and you will hear from all of those folks later on. All right, so what to expect from the flow of today's presentation. First, I'm going to talk about the history of Gould Farm and our present day mission and give you a sense of place. Nathan is then going to talk about our organizational structure and what living and working in a therapeutic community is like for staff members. And Lisanne will then talk about salary, benefits, and the hidden value of living and working here. And lastly, we will hear from Tamara, who will share why she moved her family from the hustle and bustle of New York City to this community and what that transition was like for them. And then in the end, we will open things up for questions and also talk about our current open positions. All right, so let's start by going back about 100 years. This is a photo of Gould farmers in the 1920s enjoying a picnic lunch in the orchard behind Main House. Main House is the large house that you see sort of hidden behind the trees there. And that is still here, as well as that house in the forefront. Founded in 1913, Gould Farm has been in operation for 110 years. It was founded by social reformers, Will and Agnes Gould, who are pictured right here. In a 1923 New York Times article about the farm, Agnes wrote that the farm functions as an environment of cooperation, hospitality, and varied interests. Those values are still at the heart of the work we do today at the farm. And the history of the farm is very long and very interesting. In fact, there are several books written on the topic of the farm. So I won't go into much further detail here, but if anybody is curious to learn about those books, feel free to ask and I can let you know where to find those. So in its first 6 or 7 decades of existence, in addition to always having our doors open to those with mental or emotional burdens, the farm was known for welcoming war refugees and civil rights activists here for a time of respite. They would come and work with the community until they could afford to move on to their next step in life. Today, that spirit of radical hospitality remains a part of our culture. People are welcome to come as they are into a community that is grounded in acceptance. Today, we look into our local community for what needs currently exist and try in small ways to help bridge those gaps. A few tangible examples of the way this spirit shows up today at Gould Farm is in our work on local food security issues. We donate food we produce in our garden and bakery to a local food pantry. And we also donate 2 of our CSA shares to local families in need. Gould Farm continues to keep the door open, so to speak, by welcoming international groups from other countries to learn about our model. We have hosted groups from all over the world, and some have gone on to translate the principles of Gould Farm to their home countries by founding similar communities there. We also host short-term visitors for fieldwork placements in areas such as restorative justice studies or theological students such as from Harvard Divinity School. Their stays not only enrich their educational experience, but also contribute to the community while they're here with us. Other very short-term visitors are such as medical residents completing their psychiatry rotations. They come and do short-term placements with us for a week or 2 to learn about our model of mental health recovery, something that is not taught in medical school. So it's a very unique education that they get while they're with us. So now that you have a sense of the first half century plus of the farm, let's look at the 1980s. In the 1980s, the farm made a policy decision to focus our mission on working solely with adults with serious mental illness. This was a collective decision made by our board of directors and staff, and it was a moment of not just narrowing our focus, but committing to depth as well, depth of care, intentionality of programming, and so on. We then became licensed by the state of Massachusetts in 2006 as a residential treatment program, adding additional focus and accountability to our mission and program. And today, Gould Farm serves adults who have been diagnosed with things like major depression, schizophrenia, anxiety, PTSD, and bipolar disorder. These individuals, who we call guests, Gould Farm has always called those folks guests, come to the farm for an average of 9 to 12 months. We help guests move towards recovery and independence through community living, meaningful work, and clinical care. So now that you hopefully have a little bit of a sense of our history and mission, I wanted to give you a sense of place. So Gould Farm is located in Western Massachusetts. You can see the red star there on the map. We're about 2.5 hours west of Boston and about 2.5 hours north of New York City, in this rural area of Massachusetts called the Berkshires. And we operate on about 750 acres of land. And those acres are a dynamic ecosystem of fields, forests, wetlands, pastures, and rivers, and provide the physical body for our therapeutic community. This land is referred to as a, quote, working landscape, which means that the land works economically, environmentally, and socially in support of our community. And we return the favor by being mindful and environmentally conscious stewards of this land. Gould Farm maintains over 60 buildings on our land. 26 of those are staff houses. The vast majority of staff who work here live here. 4 are guest houses, and the rest are community spaces, infrastructure, and farm buildings. We have about 10 miles of hiking trails on the property, as well as a brook for swimming and a wood-fired sauna that is used by the community. Gould Farm is located a few minutes drive from the little village of Monterey, which includes a post office, a library, a small community center, and a church. And we are 15 minutes from Great Barrington, which is a medium-sized town that includes restaurants, boutique shops, and grocery stores. All right, so I hope you have a decent sense of the history as well as the place of Gould Farm. I'm now going to pass the presentation over to Nathan, who will talk about our organizational structure and our community life.
So I'm Nathan Yapel, and I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm the work program director at Gould Farm, and I came as a volunteer about 20 years ago during college. I worked through several of the work program teams and the residential team before settling into the bakery team for the lengthiest time, and I'm currently an administrator that oversees the work program component of the organization. Over the last 20 years, I've left and come back to staff positions a few times, seeking different experience and ultimately being drawn back to the lifestyle and model of service I find here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what kind of organization the farm is. Life at Gould Farm can be hard to sum up in a neat, tidy description, but there are some important distinctions that we can make. There are some clear things that we are and that we are not. For instance, while Gould Farm is built and in many ways functions like a small village and is described as a community, it is very much first and foremost a professional mental health treatment organization that provides on-site housing for most of its employees. It is not a commune or intentional community in that all of our needs are not met by living and working here, nor are they provided by the organization. Connection to outside networks and resources for support, socialization, entertainment, and self-care, among other things, are important and encouraged. Building connections here takes time and work like it does anywhere. And while there can be amazing benefits to being a part of this community, they are there to avail yourself of, and a rich and balanced life is your own responsibility. Vocational training is not the primary goal or outcome of our program. Our function, farm, and food service programs provide structured and meaningful engagement as therapeutic tools for our guests who are here for treatment of major mental health challenges. The work program is one part of the holistic toolbox that we employ with guests on their recovery journey. As a licensed residential treatment program, we are licensed by the state departments of mental health and public health, and that is overseen by our executive director and our clinical team of credentialed therapists who also live and work here. As the first and oldest residential treatment program of our kind, we have always been grounded in person-centered care and at the forefront of mental health treatment, providing a holistic approach and community support for our guests. And while founded on religious ideals of Christian hospitality, we are not a religious community and welcome members of any or no spiritual tradition. We lead a secular lifestyle, supporting guests and staff in pursuing their own religious lives. As a nonprofit, we're supported and sustained by a board of directors, many of whom have ties to the farm as former staff, guests, and family members, or they have other historic ties to the organization. Many others have come to us with other professional experience or interest in the field of mental health treatment. We also hold deep connections with our extended community of former Gould farmers and the local communities of the Berkshires and the Boston area. Our program consists of our main campus in Monterey, which is made up of about 40 staff and their families, and up to the 36 guests that we serve. Our program also includes 2 satellite transition programs, one in Monterey and one in Medford, that provide step-down structured services to guests making transitions to greater independence and integration into the Berkshire community and the Boston area. On our main campus, our program consists of several teams that participate and support our guests' recovery. Staff fill roles in one of our 7 work program teams, the residential team, the clinical team, or in the administration. Our transition programs are staffed primarily by social workers and caseworkers. Our community is made up of about 95 people, and you can see the breakdown there. We value a diversity of experience and the multifaceted nature of the individuals that make us up. We invite all our members to bring their authentic selves to the community and share their strengths and gifts, staff and guests alike. Some of the most beautiful and powerful ways we provide support to our guests and one another is offering engagement through our own interests and celebrations. It is important to note, however, that balance is necessary here, and navigating boundaries is one of the most important things we must do, both on and off the clock. A former volunteer summed it best by saying, "We bring our authentic selves, but in a limited way." I also want to note that while we are a predominantly white organization, we are striving to create a community that is welcoming to all its members and have been doing work to be more inclusive, especially for people of color and people of various sexualities and gender expressions. This work is ongoing, and we are dedicated to educating one another and examining for change the systems, structures, and culture that have contributed us to being predominantly white. Like anywhere else, we all play varying roles in our own lives and in the lives of those around us. As you can see from this diagram, the intersection of these roles is how we show up as staff in the Gould Farm community. These are the opportunities to share of ourselves, build professional and personal relationships, and fulfill the responsibilities of our jobs. As staff members, we're always role models in the community and responsible for maintaining the boundaries that keep us safe and comfortable and also protect and support our guests. This is true both on the clock and off, and can be one of the more challenging things to learn about living and working at Gould Farm, while also providing the opportunities for sharing ourselves and finding reward in our working and living together. In sharing our own interests, activities, and hobbies with the community, it's important to stay mindful of the time and space we need for ourselves to recharge and retreat. Due to the proximity of our living with one another and our guests, it's also important to be mindful of how we are good neighbors, sensitive of noise, activity, or habits that may be disruptive to each other and our guests' treatment. And of course, as a staff, you'll be part of a multidisciplinary team that coordinates and participates in each guest's recovery. When discussing maintaining boundaries at the farm, we talk a lot about what this looks like and the skills we need to practice in order to do it. Just as we need to balance the different parts of ourselves to maintain the various roles we hold here, we likewise need to balance a variety of skills and behaviors in community. Self-awareness and maturity may be the biggest skills required to work here. As mental health treaters, we need to always be aware of what pushes our buttons and what we need to thrive, being able to identify those things with others and know when we need to take care of them for ourselves. We also need to be able to hear critique and accept support from one another. Self-care is another important thing that can't be overstated. Just like anywhere else, all our needs are not met here, and as individuals, we must be able to identify and find the supports we need to keep ourselves healthy, balanced, and showing up for one another and our guests. And finally, patience and perspective are great assets. Living and working in close proximity with one another requires a great deal of patience and tolerance for differences in style, personality, and understanding. We each hold only a small part of any picture we're a part of, and so remembering that our perspective is one among many and that it is also changeable goes a long way in creating good working and living relationships. Not to mention that patience with oneself is important through any length of time of service at Gould Farm. We are all always learning and making mistakes. Along with these skills and strengths that you bring, including willingness, curiosity, and flexibility, we do have various ways to support your learning while here. All of our community members are role models for each other, as well as for guests. I often encourage people to find another staff that they think navigates the community well and watch and ask how they do it. Every staff person has a supervisor on their team who provides structured support and training. When possible, we also try to match new people up with mentors on staff who have been here for a while and can help answer some of the more informal or hard to categorize questions about living and working here. Each staff person is part of a multidisciplinary team that works with guests on their recovery, and through that team receives training and education in mental health care and support in learning how to fill their various roles. The organization provides introductory and ongoing formal trainings through staff meetings, online coursework, and supporting continuing education. And of course, time and patience will be your greatest teachers as you move through the process of learning. While this graph looks linear, it's a good example of how the learning journey moves up and down, and over time can feel more like a spiral than a straight line. We all find ourselves on the different points on this graphic, even those of us who have been here for a while, and the journey never ends. The important thing to remember is that nobody ever stays stuck in one place. Now I'm going to turn you over to Lisanne Finston, our Executive Director, who will tell you about our compensation and the other value to be found living and working here. Thank you.
So my name is Lisanne, and I came to the farm about 9.5 years ago, and I brought my wife and my two middle school and entering high school children along for the ride, and we came here and found ourselves immersed in a wonderful community and a wonderful place to work side by side with committed, dedicated people, and a wonderful herd of cows who also happen to be from Jersey. We came from New Jersey. So sorry, that was my little joke about Jersey cows. So I'm going to talk about the really interesting part of working at Gould Farm, which is compensation and benefits and what that looks like. So we have positions at the farm that are categorized based on levels of responsibility and experience and qualifications. Clearly defined levels and salary grades both provide transparency and demonstrate pathways for advancement in the organization. We currently have 5 levels that reflect common responsibilities with a number of salary grades within each level, and the salary levels and ranges have been benchmarked using local and regional data with comparable nonprofit organizations in the region that we collected in the fall of 2021. And we usually update our salary ranges every 2 to 3 years. Beyond salary, understanding sort of the other aspects of compensation at the farm, our total compensation includes, along with salary, food benefits, housing, subsidy, health and dental benefits, paid time off, retirement benefits, and of course, some hidden benefits that we'll explore in just a moment. Through the gate, joining the team at the farm, everyone receives 5 weeks of paid time off and 10 sick days. Health insurance, employer paid 85% of premiums. We have an employee assistance program. HRA, which is a health reimbursement account, basically $2,000 of the annual medical deductible is covered by the farm, which is a nice way to make our health insurance really quite affordable. We also have a 401k with a 7% employer paid contribution, which each year is determined based on how we're doing in terms of our budget. At the second year and at the end of the second year, PTO increases to 6 weeks annually. Dental insurance kicks in at 100% coverage, and life and accident insurance. And one of the benefits of Massachusetts, for those of you who are not from Massachusetts, is we now have paid family medical leave in Massachusetts, which is a terrific benefit. After a small wait period, all folks are eligible for up to 26 weeks, I believe it is, or 25 weeks of paid leave for a variety of health and family needs. And after 7 years, we offer a 4-week paid time off sabbatical, which is a really nice way for folks to be able to take a break and refresh, and for us also to honor and dignify years of service. Some of the hidden values that come with joining the organization and living at the farm include housing subsidies, utilities, food, and we'll talk about some other hidden benefits in just a moment. But let me start by talking a little bit about some of the unusual financial considerations that come with living at the farm. We, as part of our commitments to community, provide employer-provided housing and the food benefit, which encourages and fosters all of us joining together to spend time together at meals and holidays and other celebrations. The Gould Farm Kitchen provides 3 meals a day, 365 days a year. Not only 3 meals, but really, really good meals, great food. We're really fortunate. All staff and family members are welcome to join the community regularly for meals, but not all the time. Staff all have private homes where we can cook and socialize in private as well. The farm does not cover personal grocery costs for the things that we purchase for cooking in our homes. But the value of the meals provided by our kitchen team is around $4,000 per individual per year. So we arrive at that number using some USDA numbers for a moderate food plan. And the reality again is that the value of the meals that are offered here, because the high quality food that we all enjoy, and the experience of the sharing of the gifts of each of us and the contributions that we make that happens at meal times is really a wonderful benefit. And utility costs are also carried by the organization. And the value of utility benefit is roughly $2,400 per year for a 2-bedroom house. And now that we've talked about food and utilities, let's talk a little bit about housing. Those of us who are paying rent out on the market these days are really, many people have found themselves faced with some real struggles to make ends meet, especially during this economy. The farm maintains about 26 staff housing units, as Steph mentioned earlier. The housing options range from a room all the way to a 4-bedroom house. And housing for staff is based on availability. We don't always have ideal sized housing available for you and your family, but that is worked out with applicants during the hiring process. For the majority of our staff, and there are a few exceptions, the housing reduction is taken from our paycheck pre-tax. It's a benefit for living on the farm where we work, and it means that we pay less at tax time. And this is part of our tax benefit, similar to a private school where employer provided housing is a benefit for living and working on site, so that we're able to be present and cover the on-call needs and immediate needs that sometimes arise in a residential setting. So we've committed as a part of this process of providing employer-provided housing to providing low-cost housing for staff. So on this slide, you can see that we've highlighted our 2-bedroom home cost, for example. Gould Farm charges a pre-tax $11,500 annually for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath home. And you can see that that rental rate compared to the HUD fair market value of $18,144, also vis-a-vis actual market value of a comparable unit. Finding affordable housing in these days is challenging. Here at the farm, we have lots of affordable housing. And so overall staff housing benefit is a subsidy that is valued at somewhere between $4,000 and $8,000 for housing. So along with food and utilities and housing, three of the biggest expenses in most people's budgets, there's a lot of other hidden benefits that come with living here. And after surveying many of our staff, we're kind of outlining just a few of those benefits of living and working here. When it comes to convenience, obviously we walk to work, most of us, and the central kitchen and dining hall really provide a convenience in terms of after a long day. You don't necessarily have to worry about going home and now cooking and cleaning up after it. Although we all share in the dish duty and cleanup after meals. Firewood is delivered to our door. We have on-call maintenance and always have access to basic supplies. Milk, yogurt, bread, goods that are produced right here on the farm in our program. Other hidden value is being in what's really an incredibly beautiful and welcoming and lovely place. The facilities and the surroundings here are so incredibly important to well-being, whether it's the miles of private hiking trails and cross-country skiing that we can do. We have a small fire pond. Really, it's for fire protection, but during the winter, we ice skate and play games and broom ball. We have a lovely wood-fired sauna and a swimming hole, and our own on-site fitness facility, which is a new addition that came online in 2020. And we work hard to lower our carbon footprint through our activities and our actions, whether it's recycling or composting, or working towards utilizing our land, our trees, and our goods. All of what we do is towards not only stewardship of the people in our service here, but also our land. And finally, community. What's that commercial with the little credit card and they say this costs this and this costs this? Community is priceless, right? We share life together in a caring community. We're able to, borrow and give away and share our resources freely with one another. There's options for family members to work here, whether they're partners or even, kids as they're growing older. And again, we live in the Berkshires, which is a beautiful area. And Gould Farm is a beautiful space.
All right, thanks, Lisanne.
Yeah, thank you.
Nathan, that was great. So the final part of the presentation, we're going to hear from Tamara McKernan. So she's going to introduce herself and share a bit about how she and her family moved to the farm and what that was like. So Tamara, I will wait for you to pop up here.
I'm on.
You are
unmuted.
Thank you.
So hi all, I'm Tamara McKernan. I'm the Director of Admissions. I'm also one of the clinicians. So I work in both the admissions team and the clinical team. I have been here for 11 and a half years. And I moved here from New York City, from Brooklyn. I was working for several years, 4.5, on an inpatient psychiatric unit of a public hospital in New York, in Queens. And I was moonlighting at an outpatient clinic as well to try and get varied experience. And I just felt like there had to be something different. I felt like the hospital was a bit of a revolving door, and we would do what we could and then kind of send people back into the same systems that they were in, and it wasn't super helpful all the time. So I had no idea that residential programs, particularly like Gould Farm, existed at all, because I was really in the public system, and ended up finding it. I was married and still married and had a 1.5-year-old at the time, and moved up to the Berkshires. We did not have, my husband's originally from the Berkshires, but had lived in the city for 20 years. We did not have housing at first. And so I lived with my mother-in-law for 6 months, and commuted to work. And I had been commuting from Brooklyn to Queens for years, driving. And then I had to commute from Lee, which is about 20 minutes away, to here. And I couldn't believe the level of stress that was leaving my body as I commuted. And now I walk, which is even better. So I live here with my 1.5-year-old is now a 13-year-old. And we have since now have a 10-year-old as well. And I live here, and a lot of our life is just intertwined into this community. Our Gould Farm traditions have become our family traditions. We do this bringing down the tree where we sing the 12 days of Gould Farm Christmas, and it's very much a part of like my family's traditions as well. But we also do Hanukkah, and we also, there's like I do softball over the summer with, it's just a matter of like finding the things that you like and being a part of community in the ways that feel good to you. And so, yeah, it was a big transition from Brooklyn to the Berkshires. But a great one that I really have been able to see people grow and move forward in their recovery in a way that I wasn't able to before. And to really see that all the way through and still have connections. People come back or reach out years later, and we're able to see the progress that people have made in their recovery in a really holistic way that isn't always the case in other places. And it's a huge difference. It's an adjustment. When I worked in inpatient and even outpatient moonlighting, I don't think people even knew I had kids. And now they're sitting at a meal with them, or they're sharing these traditions with them. And it makes us much more human, and much more, it's just a different, it's relationship building in such a different way that is just so invaluable. So yeah, just love being here. There's no good pizza except for farther away. But other than that, the Berkshires, it's an amazing place to live, and an amazing community to live in, and to amazing people to work with and for. So